Hello everyone, welcome to Live Interactive English. I'm Mike.
And I'm Rainbow.
And you know what, Rainbow?
What?
I don't have a passion for pickleball.
Oh, can you explain what that is, actually?
No, because I don't know what it is. That's why I don't have a passion for it. But I'm a little worried it's messy. If you're hitting pickles, that won't end well.
And that pickle is also a ball?
That's true, a round pickle. What is going on with this? Well, we're gonna have to find out more because it's a passion for pickleball, the unlikely rise of a backyard sport. I think basically this is one of those sports that people played when they were kids, in the backyard, in the schoolyard, but now people are taking it very seriously, and there's even talk of it going to the Olympics.
That's crazy.
Yeah, are there sports that you played as a kid that you only played as a kid? You loved them, but you can't really imagine yourself doing it now or seeing it on TV, like something like this.
Dodgeball.
Ooh.
I loved it as a kid,
Okay.
but don't really enjoy the idea of the fact that I could be bruised at any point.
Yeah, it is kind of a violent game.
It's
and
super violent.
I think as people get bigger and older and stronger, it could hurt more.
Yeah.
Of course, they made a comedy movie about sort of professional dodgeball.
Yeah.
But it never really, I'd never heard
It's
anyone
not.
actually playing it professionally or saying, oh, we should take this sport to the Olympics. But there are some things, you know, beach volleyball used to be something people only did at the beach. Now it's a big international sport. And of course, there are other things that when I was a kid, if someone said, oh, you know, breakdancing, skateboarding, those are going to be in the Olympics. When I was a kid, if someone had told me, come on, breakdancing will never be in the Olympics, that's crazy. Well, things change, and if this sport becomes really popular and really international, it could. So maybe pickleball is the next beach volleyball or whatever to come along. It goes from the backyard to becoming a very serious sport. But let's find out why people have a passion for pickleball. And what happens to all the pickles? Do they eat them?
No, they're probably on the ground.
Or on the burgers?
What do tennis, the state of Washington, and competitive rowing have in common? The answer is pickleball. The game is currently one of the fastest growing in the United States. But what is it?
All right, we don't know what pickleball is, but there are people out there in the world who have a passion for it.
Oh, they care so much about
I wanna
it.
meet these people.
They're so excited.
It's their life.
But it's so unlikely. This is an unlikely sport and an unlikely rise of this backyard sport.
But passion, people have passion.
Oh, yeah, that means you're so excited for something. You love it so much. You're excited. You don't want to go to sleep because you think about it all the time. And of course, you can have a passion for a sport that you love so much. If you have a passion for basketball, you're always maybe wearing jerseys. You're watching it every night during dinner. You want to study it. You want to play it. You just want to do it all the time. You can also have a passion for music, a type of music that you play or listen to and you never get tired of. You can actually also have a passion for a person. If you're super in love with them, you think about them all the time and it just takes up all of your mind, and every time you think about them, you get super happy. That is passion. And if passion were a color, it would be red, it would be fire, it would be burning, because that's how you feel in your heart. It's an energy that's very strong and that goes on for a long time. Well, maybe not always a long time, but it can just go on and on because you're so excited. An example for you, Carol has a passion for books and she wants to work in a library. So Carol's probably always talking about her favorite books because she loves them.
Even the smell of books makes her happy. She has a real love, an enthusiastic love for them, a passion. All right, so let's find out all about pickleball and these strange people who have a passion for it. What do tennis, the state of Washington, and competitive rowing have in common?
No idea.
Well, at least tennis and rowing, they're hard to do at the same time. Imagine rowing a boat while playing tennis. That would be a really hard thing to do. But what do they have in common? We're asking this question at the beginning just to kind of catch the reader's attention, get them thinking, and we have three kind of random things that seem to have no connection. Tennis, the state of Washington, that's in Northwest, like Seattle, right? Microsoft is from Washington State, not Washington, D.C., not where, you know, the president works. This is Washington State, over by Oregon and California. And competitive rowing, so people who row boats really fast in the Olympics, you know, those guys and ladies, what do they have in common? Yeah, not much.
The answer is pickleball.
Really?
The game is currently one of the fastest growing in the United States.
Wow.
So a lot of people are doing it, a lot of people love it, and a lot of people are getting into it. But what is it? We do not know, so we got to take a break to find out.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。这2天的课程要介绍一种运动，叫做 Pickleball 匹克球。那么标题写到 Passion for Pickleball， 这个 passion 就是名词，它表示强烈爱好或者是热情，后面可以接 for 加上名词或动名词去表达酷爱什么什么。Rainbow 老师提到说，对篮球有强烈爱好的人，也许会穿着球衣，每晚追着篮球赛这样。那老师说的 jersey 这个字 Jersey jersey， 它表示运动衫，那尤其是指这种体育运动队队员他们所穿的运动衫。好，那么课文一开始问我们说，网球、华盛顿州还有竞赛划船有什么共同点呢？而答案就是匹克球。这项运动目前是美国成长最快的运动之一。那 Mike 老师说，刚刚那3个网球、华盛顿州还有竞赛划船，听起来就好像3样随机的事物凑在一起。老师用到 random R-A-N-D-O-M random 就可以形容是随机的或是任意的。那这边一个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，我们来看这个重点 have in common 表示有共同点或者是兴趣啊、经历等等是相同的。那么形容彼此之间的相似程度时呢，我们可以在 have 跟 in common 之间加上 a lot 表示有很多 something 有一些 little 没多少 nothing 完全没有等等。举例来说 Her sister and I have something in common. We both love singing. 我跟她姐姐有共通之处，我们2个都爱唱歌。好，接回到课文中。
Pickleball combines elements of tennis, table tennis, and badminton. It's played with a paddle and a hard plastic ball with holes on a court divided by a ground-level net. Teams of 1 or 2 players compete to reach 11 points. The game begins with a serve, and the ball must bounce once on each side before players can hit it directly out of the air. Only the serving side can score points, which happens when the other team makes a fault or an error. If the serving side makes a fault, the other team gains the serve, and so on. The game dates back to the 1960s in a city near Seattle. There, 2 bored families combined a few leftover sports items they had to create something new. This sport's unusual name comes from the competitive rowing term pickleboat. A pickleboat is made up of rowers who are left over after the main teams were chosen.
All right, so to find out why people have a passion for pickleball, let's learn what the heck pickleball is. Well, the first sentence gives us a very good idea. Pickleball combines elements of tennis, table tennis, and badminton. Okay, well, those sports are all kind of similar. In fact, as a group, we would call those sports racket sports because you use a racket, that thing with that kind of web, that net at the end that you hit the ball or whatever you're hitting with. That's a racket, R-A-C-K-E-T. So we call those racket sports, sports where you hit something over a net and you have something in your hand to hit it with. Now, they often combine a lot of the same rules and a lot of the same ideas, like hit the thing, it can bounce once, get it over the net, don't let it go outside the lines, that type of thing. When we combine things, we take different things, in this case different rules, and we mix them together to kind of get something new. Now, of course, we can combine these ideas or these rules, like in this sport, but often when we think of combining, a simpler way to think of it is when you mix things together in the kitchen. If you have your hot black coffee and your cold milk, and you pour the milk in, well, once you stir it a little bit, now it becomes that kind of light brown thing. Those 2 separate things have joined together to make something new. And we do that, of course, often when we're cooking, when we're mixing, which is a very similar word, or combining. So our example sentence for combine is Jim combined orange juice with pineapple juice to make a delicious drink. He mixed them together. He didn't drink the orange juice and then the pineapple juice. No, he put them into a third glass where they combined or mixed together.
And we're seeing that
Pickleball.
Pickleball combines the elements of 3 different sports. So the elements are parts of it. Basically, these are parts that you can be divided into. And if the elements are similar, that means maybe the rules are similar, maybe the actions you do are similar, maybe you use a racket, just like Mike said, or maybe the way you play it and the skills needed are the same. So these would be the elements, the requirements, the parts of it. So I have an example for you. The movie included many different elements from action to drama. So in the case of the movie, the elements are the different topics that it covers. There's action, there's drama, there's romance. There's so many different elements that are involved. I have a next sentence with the article. It says it's, which means the sport. It's played with a paddle and a hard plastic ball with holes on a court divided by a ground level net. Teams of 1 or 2 players compete to reach 11 points. Interesting. So those are the rules.
Okay, kind of like volleyball, kind of like
tennis.
Badminton. We have a paddle. That
Yeah.
would be like table tennis or
Yeah.
ping pong. So it doesn't have that net.
So
It's
why
probably
is
just
it not paddle ball?
Well, I think it probably was called paddle ball
Oh.
at some point. And we have a ball with holes in it. Sometimes these are called wiffle balls. You might know them from playing baseball inside. You can hit them, but they don't travel very far. They slow down very quickly. And it's a little bit of a safer way to play with a ball because it won't, hit you hard or something like that. And then they said a ground level net divides the playing surface or the court. Ground level means the net is on the ground. So this would be like tennis, not like badminton or volleyball where the net is above the ground. But in all of those sports, and ping pong too, table tennis too, the net divides the court or where the players are. When something divides, it basically cuts something in 2.
Yeah.
It can cut it into more parts, but basically we're talking about taking a knife or taking something, cutting something in 2. If the teacher says, here's a line, and I want these students over here and those students over there, that's to divide the class. So we can divide things physically, or we can divide things just as an idea to say, okay, put this over here, put that over there. We're making it separate into 2. We are dividing it. For example, the show was divided into 2 parts, the first act and the second act, or part A and part B.
We also have the verb compete, which means to go against one another in the case of a sport. So any sort of sport is a type of competition which ends with T-I-O-N, which makes it a noun. So when we're competing against one another, that means we're going against each other to see who wins. There are points involved. There's maybe a competition could be who's the fastest, who throws the furthest. But in terms of a team sport, it's which team gets the most points. So in all sorts of sports, we talk about these, like basketball, we have tennis. You can be competing for the number of points. If it's one person, then you just compete a singular thing. So teams from all around the country are competing in this weekend's tennis event. So that's also a team sport, and it goes team against team to see who wins the most points, and then that one will be the winner.
All right, so pickleball sounds kind of like tennis or something like that, and let's see how you actually play it. When you get down to it, it says the game begins with a serve, just like as you do in tennis, volleyball, table tennis, and badminton. So one person has to hit the ball first to begin the game. That's called a serve. And the ball must bounce once on each side before players can hit it directly out of the air. Oh, so one of the rules is the ball must bounce. Where of course,
it's kind of like ping pong.
Yeah, of course in tennis you don't have to do that. Right. You can volley the ball, which is hit it before it bounces. But generally, in these sports, you do let the ball bounce. But in pickleball, that's a rule, maybe to keep the game a little slower, a little more relaxed. You can't, smash the ball at people because it has to bounce. And then how do we actually count the score?
Only the serving side can score points, which happens when the other team makes a fault or an error. If the serving side makes a fault, the other team gains the serve, and so on. So the serving side is the person who's passing the ball. The team that's passing the ball can score points. The other team cannot.
Okay, but if you make a mistake, then I serve, and as long as I continue to win, I get points. Yeah, it's kind of like ping pong or volleyball, I think, badminton. A little, not like tennis, where one player will serve a whole game, and then they'll take turns. But basically, like a lot of those other sort of ball and net sports that we think about. Now, when did they start doing this very interesting version of tennis? It says the game dates back to the 1960s in a city near Seattle.
Really?
Seattle being
that's such a long time ago.
The big city in Washington. Well, sports often do. They often take, a few generations to kind of catch on. What happened in the very first time they played it? Well, there it says in Seattle back in the 60s, two bored families combined a few leftover sports items they had to create something new. That's kind of cool. So they were like, hey, we should make a form of tennis we can play at our home. No, they said, we have these old broken tennis rackets and this old net that doesn't really, hey, if we tie the nets to some chairs and play after our barbecue with our old sports stuff, this could be fun. And that's how it started.
That's creative.
It is very creative. And what about that unusual and maybe also creative
weird
pickleball name?
The sport's unusual name comes from the competitive rowing term pickle boat.
Pickle boat.
A pickle boat is made up of rowers who were left over after the main teams were chosen.
Oh, interesting.
No one wants them.
So the pickle rowers were the not so strong rowers.
The ones no one liked.
They weren't the A team or maybe even the B team.
No.
They were like the D team. So you put those poor guys and poor girls, I guess, too, in the pickle boat. Yeah, they're in the pickle boat. They're just, they're not so good. That's interesting. I guess because they feel that their sport is kind of like, it's not quite tennis. It's not quite that professional or that good. That's kind of a funny name. They're kind of making fun of their own silly sport, but it sounds like it's been pretty popular so far since the 1960s till now, and we'll show you just how popular tomorrow.
匹克球 Pickleball 它结合了网球、桌球还有羽毛球的元素。那么打的时候呢，是要用一支球拍和一颗有洞的硬质塑胶球。它的球场呢，一样是有球网隔开，但球网是有碰到地面的。那么会由一个人或两个人所组成的队伍争取达到11分。好，单字 combine 它表示结合或是使结合、合并的意思。那么 element 它表示要素、组成部分或者是元素。再来 divide 它是动词，表示使分开、隔开，也有划分的意思。那么 compete 这个动词则是竞争或者是参加比赛。它的相关词性有 competition 就表示竞争、竞赛，是个名词；还有 competitive 那就可以形容是竞争的、具有竞争力的。另外补充一下，麦克老师提到，像网球啊、羽球等等，他们是属于 racket sports。这个 racket 是拼作 R-A-C-K-E-T， 它表示球拍。好，那老师还有提到 wiffle ball。微浮球这种球啊，就是由塑胶做成的，那球上面是有洞的，内部中空，打也打不远，然后也不容易造成受伤。好，那我们再来看看这个匹克球它的规则。在发球后呢，球必须在每一边都反弹一次，才能凌空击球。那么只有发球方可以得分，如果发球方失误，那就是换另外一队取得发球权。老师提到说，网球的话呢，是不需要等到球反弹才能击球。那这时候我们可以用到一个动词叫 volley， 也就是排球 volleyball 其中的 volley，V-O-L-L-E-Y。这个动词可以表达截击、凌空击球，也就是呢不等球落地就回击了。好，那么课文最后提到说，匹克球的起源是两个感到无聊的家庭，他们结合手边留剩下的几样运动用品，然后创造出的新玩法。而它的名称呢，是来自竞赛划船的术语 Pickleball 泡菜船或者是腌菜船。那这种 Pickleball 它是由选完主要队伍之后，然后挑完剩下的花桨手所组成的，所以也就是不要剩下的，就跟我们刚刚说的那个不要剩下的运动用品是类似的语义咯。好，那这边一个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，我们来学 if 引导条件句的用法。首先呢，表示一般的情况或是普遍法则时，这时候 if 跟 when 啊，或者是 every time 意思相近。那我们来看句型是 if 主词加上现在式动词，逗号，主词加上现在式动词。像 if I drink coffee after dinner，I have trouble sleeping。若是在晚餐后喝咖啡，我就难以入睡。好，再来，如果是表达条件成立就会发生某种情况时，那如果是指未来条件，记得 if 子句里面要用现在式来取代未来式哦。那它的句型就是 if 主词加动词，逗号，主词加上 can、will 或是 may 加上原形动词。这个助动词其实你也可以视实际情况把它换成 must。ought to 或者是 should 等等。举例来说 ，If the weather is nice tomorrow, we will go hiking。如果明天天气好，我们会去健行。好，那另外主要子句你也可以用祈使句表示，所以这个句型就是 if 主词加动词，逗号祈使句。像 If you have any questions, just give me a call。如果你有任何问题，就打电话给我吧。好，以上是今天的讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
What do tennis, the state of Washington, and competitive rowing have in common? The answer is pickleball. The game is currently one of the fastest growing in the United States. But what is it? Pickleball combines elements of tennis, table tennis, and badminton. It's played with a paddle and a hard plastic ball with holes on a court divided by a ground-level net. Teams of 1 or 2 players compete to reach 11 points. The game begins with a serve, and the ball must bounce once on each side before players can hit it directly out of the air. Only the serving side can score points, which happens when the other team makes a fault or an error. If the serving side makes a fault, the other team gains the serve, and so on. The game dates back to the 1960s in a city near Seattle. There, 2 bored families combined a few leftover sports items they had to create something new. The sport's unusual name comes from the competitive rowing term pickleboat. A pickleboat is made up of rowers who are left over after the main teams were chosen.
Hello, I'm Matt.
I'm Josh.
Today we're playing Word Drop. We each have 3 cards with words or phrases on them that we haven't looked at yet. And we need to fit these into a conversation as smoothly as we can. So I guess I'm going to get the conversation started.
Looking forward to it.
Take a look. Okay. So I recently, within the last 2 years, started playing a new sport. And it's Gaelic football, which is like an Irish kind of football. So it's not like soccer. It's not like American football. It's a different game, and it's something that I newly discovered, and it's like now I just like think about it all the time, and I'm excited for the next practice, and it's something that I now really have a passion for.
That sounds absolutely incredible. I was never good at sport as a kid. In fact, I don't even really play sport to this day, I guess. I like to go swimming, but I had kind of a traumatic experience as a child. Okay. I wore this green skivvy or a turtleneck to a sports game, and then everyone teased me for it. So I decided to study chemistry instead, and I realized that lead was my favorite element.
Wow.
That's a
big turnaround.
Yeah.
Big turnaround for you there. Well, that's interesting. I'm glad you found something you're interested in, and I think even with something like chemistry, as much as there's things like sports, so with science, you can probably, just like a sport, you can probably find another way just to to compete with other scientists.
Yeah, totally. There's always a competitive sort of streak with any sort of hobby, whether it's sport or I guess in the educational field as well, which is really great. And I suppose now I do play a little bit more sport. I swim, so I suppose I've found a way to combine chemistry now with sport in my adult life.
Okay. Good. That's good that you found that way to combine things. But another thing is, like, I find people are really interested in sports, really care about a team that they like. And even within a city, sometimes you'll have two teams. And even within a friend group, some friends support one team, another supports the other, and it really divides the friend group.
Oh, it really does. And I really hate it when that happens. I mean, I've found with my friends now, it's just getting harder and harder. We have nothing in common.
Okay. Nothing in common?
Yeah, nothing in common.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think I just need to perhaps find more hobbies. You know, just chemistry and sport is too limited.
See you next time.